an original story narrated exclusively for Love Written in Silence. Lady Amelia Blackwood's gloved fingers trembled as she yanked open the carriage door, her breath forming desperate clouds in the winter air. Behind her, voices grew louder. Her father and the baron he intended her to marry, while snow fell in silent, implacable sheets across the courtyard. Inside the carriage, Lady Constance Harrington's eyes widened only briefly before her lips curved into a smile that seemed to know too much. The carriage lurched forward as Amelia collapsed onto the velvet seat, her escape secured, but her future suddenly unmoored. She couldn't know that this single mistake, entering the wrong carriage, had just delivered her precisely where Lady Constance had planned all along. On a collision course with the formidable Duke of Thornfield, a man whose cold reputation concealed wounds that mirrored her own. "Please drive on," Lady Amelia Blackwood called to the coachman, not yet realizing she had entered the wrong carriage. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she glanced back at Westmoreland Hall, where her father and Lord Bainbridge would soon discover her absence. Only when she turned forward did she notice the carriage's other occupant, a woman with striking features and impeccable posture, regarded her with curious eyes. Forgive me," Amelia stammered. "I thought this was the Pembroke carriage." "Evidently not." The woman's voice was melodious, controlled. "I am Lady Constance Harrington." "And you appear to be fleeing something rather urgently." Amelia's cheeks burned. "Lady Amelia Blackwood, I apologize for the intrusion. If you could stop the carriage, I shall." "Nonsense. The snow is worsening." Lady Constance tapped her gloved fingers against her knee. "Besides, I rarely encounter such dramatic entrances. It would be a shame to cut our acquaintance short." The carriage continued its steady pace away from the Westmoreland estate. Through the frosted window, Amelia watched the familiar landscape disappear into swirling white. She had planned her escape meticulously, or so she'd thought. The Pembroke carriage would have taken her to her aunt in London, away from her father's insistence that she marry Lord Bainbridge, a man 30 years her senior with cold eyes and colder hands. "You're Lord Blackwood's daughter," Lady Constance observed. "The one being courted by Baron Bainbridge." Amelia stiffened. "News travels quickly in society. Society has little else to occupy itself with during winter months." Lady Constance's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "I take it the match is not to your liking." "The match is to my father's liking," Amelia replied carefully. "Lord Bainbridge offers connections my father desires." "And what do you desire, Lady Amelia?" The directness of the question startled her. Ladies of their station rarely spoke of desire, only duty, propriety, and advantage. "I desire," Amelia hesitated, "choice, dignity, not to be traded for political alliances." Lady Constance's expression softened momentarily. How refreshingly honest. "We are bound for Thornfield Estate, my brother's home. You're welcome to rest there while alternative arrangements are made. Your brother, the Duke of Thornfield." Amelia's stomach tightened. Everyone knew of the Duke, James Harrington, a man whose severe reputation preceded him. Widowed young, he was said to rule his vast estates with an iron will and cold precision. "I couldn't impose," Amelia protested weakly. "You already have," Lady Constance replied, though her tone remained light. "Besides, Thornfield is remote enough that word of your presence won't reach your father immediately. It provides time to consider your options." Something in Lady Constance's manner suggested calculation rather than mere kindness. But Amelia had few alternatives. The snow was falling heavier now, transforming the countryside into a blank canvas. "Why would you help me?" Amelia asked finally. Lady Constance's smile deepened. "Perhaps I recognize something in you that I value. Intelligence, determination. Or perhaps I simply enjoy disrupting predictable outcomes." The carriage traveled for another hour through thickening snow before Thornfield Estate emerged from the whiteness. Unlike the ornate architecture of Westmoreland Hall, Thornfield presented a more austere grandeur, gray stone rising from the snowy landscape, windows glowing with warm light against the gathering dusk. As they approached, Amelia noticed how the estate's tenants paused in their work to acknowledge the carriage. Their expressions showed respect, but not the fearful deference she had expected, given the Duke's reputation. "My brother maintains exacting standards," Lady Constance said, following Amelia's gaze. "But he is fair, The estate prospers under his management, despite complications. Complications. Lady Constance waved her hand dismissively. Family matters. Trustees who believe they know better than the Duke himself how Thornfield should be managed. The carriage came to a halt before the main entrance. A footman appeared immediately, opening the door and lowering the steps. "Welcome to Thornfield, Lady Constance," he said, then glanced at Amelia with momentary surprise. "Thank you, Phillips. This is Lady Amelia Blackwood, who will be our guest." Lady Constance descended gracefully. "Please have Mrs. Winters prepare the blue room." As Amelia followed, the imposing facade of Thornfield loomed above her. She had escaped one fate, only to place herself entirely at the mercy of strangers. And not just any strangers, but the family of a duke, known for his uncompromising nature. Lady Constance took her arm, guiding her toward the entrance. "Don't look so troubled, Lady Amelia. You've escaped one cage. I assure you, Thornfield is not another." Yet as they crossed the threshold, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that she had stepped into something far more complex than simple sanctuary. Lady Constance's kindness seemed too deliberate, her acceptance of Amelia's unexpected arrival too seamless. What Amelia couldn't know was that her mistake, entering the wrong carriage, might not have been entirely accidental in its outcome. The great hall of Thornfield Estate enveloped Amelia in warmth after the bitter cold outside. Footmen moved efficiently, taking their cloaks and gloves as Lady Constance guided her deeper into the house. "My brother may be in his study," Lady Constance said. "He rarely leaves it before dinner when estate matters require his attention." As if summoned by her words, a door at the far end of the corridor opened. The Duke of Thornfield emerged, tall and imposing, his dark hair contrasting sharply with the white of his collar. His eyes, a startling blue that reminded Amelia of winter skies, narrowed slightly at the sight of a stranger in his home. "Constance." His voice deep and measured. "I wasn't aware we expected guests." Lady Constance smiled. "James, may I present Lady Amelia Blackwood? She found herself in need of temporary sanctuary, and I offered Thornfield's hospitality." The Duke's gaze fell upon Amelia, assessing her with unsettling thoroughness. She felt herself straightening instinctively under his scrutiny. "Lady Amelia," he said finally, offering a formal bow, "welcome to Thornfield." "Your Grace," Amelia curtsied. "I apologize for the intrusion. Your sister has been most kind." "My sister's kindness often comes with underlying purpose," he replied, with a pointed look at Lady Constance. "But Thornfield's doors are open to those in need." There was something in his manner, a rigid control, as if he measured each word before speaking, that made Amelia wonder what lay beneath his composure. "Lady Amelia entered my carriage by mistake," Lady Constance explained. "She was fleeing an unwanted suitor, Baron Bainbridge." The Duke's expression darkened momentarily. "I'm acquainted with the Baron. His reputation precedes him." He turned to Amelia. "You have my sympathy, Lady Amelia, and my hospitality for as long as necessary." "Thank you, Your Grace. I won't impose longer than required to make alternative arrangements." "Nonsense," Lady Constance interjected, with the snow worsening. "Travel will be impossible for days. Besides, Thornfield is quiet this time of year. Your company would be welcome." The Duke said nothing to contradict his sister, but Amelia sensed his reservation. Before further discussion could occur, the butler announced dinner would be served shortly. "I'll show Lady Amelia to her room so she may refresh herself," Lady Constance said. "We'll join you in the dining room presently, James." As they ascended the grand staircase, Amelia glanced back. The Duke remained in the corridor, watching them with an unreadable expression. "Your brother seems severe," Amelia ventured. Lady Constance laughed softly. "James bears many responsibilities. The trustees my father appointed before his death still maintained significant control over Thornfield's affairs, despite my brother reaching his majority years ago. They question his every decision, undermining his authority." "Why would your father arrange such restrictions?" "Our father was ill in his final years, in mind as well as body. He feared James lacked the temperament to manage Thornfield properly." Lady Constance's voice hardened slightly. "The trustees will only relinquish control when James marries a woman they deem suitable, someone who might temper his judgment, as they phrase it." Amelia frowned. "That seems an unfair constraint." "Indeed. particularly as their idea of suitable aligned suspiciously with their own interests. They reached a door at the end of the corridor. Here we are, the blue room. The chamber was elegant but understated, with windows overlooking the snow-covered gardens. A fire crackled in the grate, and fresh linens adorned the bed. "I'll send a maid to help you prepare for dinner," Lady Constance said. "You'll find some suitable attire in the wardrobe, things I rarely wear that should fit well enough." Left alone, Amelia moved to the window. Thornfield's grounds stretched before her, beautiful in their winter dormancy. What strange twist of fate had brought her here? And why did Lady Constance's explanation of her brother's situation feel like information deliberately shared? Dinner was a subdued affair. The Duke spoke little, though his occasional questions revealed a sharp intellect. He inquired about books Amelia had read, her thoughts on agricultural improvements, and her observations of tenant conditions at her father's estate. His surprise at her knowledgeable responses was evident, if quickly masked. "Lady Amelia has a mind for management, James," Lady Constance remarked. "Rather unusual in a woman of her age and station. My father believed daughters should understand estate matters as thoroughly as sons," Amelia explained, "though he never intended for me to apply such knowledge." "A waste," the Duke said quietly. "Knowledge unused serves no purpose." Later that evening, as Amelia prepared for bed, a knock came at her door. Lady Constance entered, carrying a small stack of correspondence. "Letters arrived before the snow made the roads impassable," she explained. "Including one from your father to my brother." Amelia's heart sank. "He's discovered where I am." "Not yet. This concerns estate business. Our properties adjoin in the north. But it's only a matter of time before he learns of your whereabouts." Lady Constance sat beside Amelia. "I've been thinking of your situation. Perhaps there's a solution that benefits us both." "What do you mean?" "My brother needs freedom from his trustees. You need escape from an unwanted marriage." Lady Constance's eyes gleamed in the firelight. "Consider remaining at Thornfield, not as a guest, but with purpose." "What purpose could I possibly serve?" "Get to know James. Let him know you. The trustees seek a practical, level-headed woman for my brother. Qualities you clearly possess." Lady Constance smiled. "I'm not suggesting anything improper. An opportunity to consider alternatives to your current predicament." Amelia stared at her, understanding dawning. "You want me to marry your brother?" "I want you both to have choice," Lady Constance replied. "Something neither of you currently possesses." As snow continued falling outside, Amelia realized she couldn't politely refuse this invitation to stay. Nor was she entirely certain she wished to. Days at Thornfield settled into an unexpected rhythm. The snow showed no signs of relenting, transforming the estate into an isolated world of white silence. Amelia found herself drawn into the daily patterns of life there. Morning correspondence in the library, afternoon walks when weather permitted, evenings of conversation by the fire. The Duke, initially reserved, gradually revealed himself through small gestures rather than words. She noticed how he remembered servants' names, inquired after their families, and adjusted his expectations when illness or hardship affected the household staff. These weren't the actions of the cold aristocrat society described. One morning, Amelia encountered him in the library, surrounded by ledgers and maps. "Forgive me," she said, retreating. "I didn't mean to disturb your work." "You don't disturb me," he replied, surprising them both. After a moment's hesitation, he added, "Perhaps you might offer an opinion. These are tenant farm boundaries. I'm considering reallocations to improve productivity." Amelia approached cautiously. The maps showed detailed property divisions, annotated with crop rotations and yields. "You're very thorough," she observed. "Thoroughness prevents mistakes." He indicated the northern boundary. "This tenant, Wilkins, has poor soil but excellent drainage. His neighbor, Morris, has the opposite problem." Amelia studied the map. "Have you considered adjusting the boundary here?" She traced a line. "It follows natural contours and gives each farmer a more balanced parcel." The Duke stared at her, then back at the map. "I hadn't seen that possibility." His voice held no resentment at her suggestion, only thoughtful consideration. It's elegant in its simplicity. After that morning, he occasionally sought her perspective on estate matters. These conversations revealed a man burdened by responsibility, yet determined to fulfill it honorably, a stark contrast to the calculating coldness she'd expected. Winter deepened around Thornfield. On rare clear days, Amelia ventured into the gardens, finding unexpected solace in the stark beauty of dormant plants and snow-laden branches. During one such walk, she discovered the Duke observing the frozen fountain at the garden's center. "It will be beautiful in spring," he said without turning. "My mother designed these gardens. They reflect her practical nature, beauty with purpose. Every plant provides something useful: medicine, food, fragrance." "You miss her," Amelia observed. "Daily." He glanced at her. "Your father still lives, I understand." "Yes, though we rarely share the same understanding of things. That's often the way between parents and children." He gestured toward a snow-covered path. "Would you care to walk? The West Gardens offer protection from the wind." Their walks became another routine, careful conversations about books, philosophy, and estate management, never straying into personal matters, yet revealing much through what remained unsaid. Amelia learned to read his silences, to understand when a tightened jaw indicated disagreement he was too polite to voice, or when a slight softening around his eyes suggested approval. Lady Constance observed their growing acquaintance with subtle satisfaction. She arranged situations that required their cooperation, reviewing household accounts together, discussing improvements to tenant cottages, examining the library's cataloging system. One evening, as they sat in the drawing room, the housekeeper entered with a troubled expression. "Begging your pardon, Your Grace, but there's talk in the village. People are saying Lady Amelia is here under improper circumstances." The Duke's expression hardened. "What exactly are they saying, Mrs. Winters?" "That she arrived alone, unchaperoned, and remains here without family or proper introduction." The housekeeper looked uncomfortable. "The vicar's wife has been particularly vocal." "I should leave," Amelia said quietly after Mrs. Winters departed. "I'm bringing scandal to your household." "You'll do no such thing," the Duke replied firmly. "Scandal feeds on reaction. We will continue as we are, with dignity." Lady Constance nodded. "Besides, James rarely concerns himself with village gossip. His reputation for integrity speaks for itself." Yet Amelia noticed how the Duke's shoulders carried new tension in the days that followed. When letters arrived from neighboring estates, his expression grew increasingly grim. "The trustees have heard the rumors," he told his sister one evening, unaware that Amelia stood in the corridor outside the study. "They're sending representatives to assess the situation." "Perfect timing," Lady Constance replied. "Let them see how well you manage Thornfield, with Lady Amelia's intelligent contribution. Don't manipulate this situation, Constance. Lady Amelia deserves better than to be used as a pawn in our battle with the trustees." His defense of her integrity touched Amelia deeply. Later, when she encountered Lady Constance alone, she confronted her directly. "Your brother believes I'm an innocent party in whatever scheme you've devised regarding the trustees. Is that true?" Lady Constance studied her thoughtfully. "My brother has been trapped by our father's lack of faith in him. I merely created an opportunity for him to demonstrate his true character, to you, to the trustees, to himself. And my role in this opportunity was initially convenient, I admit, but I've watched you together. There's genuine understanding growing between you." Lady Constance's expression softened. "James needs someone who sees him clearly, not his title or his fortune, but his sense of duty and honor. You see that in him, don't you?" Amelia couldn't deny it. In their winter walks and quiet conversations, she had glimpsed a man of principle and depth, someone whose reserve masked not coldness, but careful consideration. But as whispers continued spreading beyond Thornfield's boundaries, Amelia wondered how long their fragile understanding could withstand the pressure of society's judgment. The great hall of Thornfield, filled with tenants and local officials, for the quarterly estate meeting, Amelia sat beside Lady Constance. Conscious of the curious glances directed her way, the Duke stood at the front, his bearing regal yet approachable, as he addressed concerns about winter grain stores and spring planting. Midway through the proceedings, a well-dressed gentleman rose from among the trustees' representatives. "Your Grace," he said, voice carrying authority, "the board has reviewed your proposal regarding the northern coal deposits. We believe immediate extraction would be financially advantageous, particularly given the rising coal prices in London markets. The Duke's expression remained neutral. And the tenant cottages above those deposits? Relocation would be necessary, of course. We've calculated fair compensation. Murmurs rippled through the assembled tenants. Amelia noticed how several families exchanged worried glances. Those cottages have housed Thornfield families for generations, the Duke replied evenly. The Millers have worked that land since my grandfather's time. The Coopers have buried 3 generations in the churchyard nearby. Progress requires sacrifice, Your Grace, the trustee responded. The profits would benefit the entire estate. A tense silence fell. Amelia could see the Duke measuring his response carefully, aware of the many eyes upon him. I've reviewed the geological surveys, he said finally. There are deeper deposits to the east, requiring more initial investment, but ultimately yielding greater returns without displacing families. The board strongly recommends. The board advises, the Duke interrupted, his tone firm, but not harsh. Final decisions regarding tenant welfare rest with me. We will pursue the eastern deposits. The northern cottages remain undisturbed. The trustee's face tightened with displeasure. As you wish, Your Grace. The board will note your prioritization of sentiment over financial advantage. Note instead my prioritization of human dignity over immediate profit, the Duke corrected. Thornfield's strength lies in its people, not merely its resources. Watching him stand unwavering, despite the trustee's clear disapproval, Amelia felt something shift within her. This was not a man who sacrificed others for his own benefit. A stark contrast to her father and Lord Bainbridge, who viewed people as means to ends rather than ends in themselves. After the meeting concluded, she found herself walking alongside the Duke as he inspected the estate's winter preparations. That couldn't have been an easy decision, she ventured. The trustees seemed displeased. The trustees measure success in quarterly profits, he replied. I measure it in generations. Those families have given their lives to Thornfield. I won't repay their loyalty with displacement. Even at personal cost, he glanced at her. What cost? Money I don't need. The approval of men who've never worked the land they so eagerly profit from. Their continued control over your inheritance, Amelia said quietly. Lady Constance mentioned their power depends on their assessment of your judgment. The Duke's step slowed. My sister speaks too freely of family matters. She cares deeply for you. Yes. Though her methods sometimes leave much to be desired. They walked in silence for several moments before he spoke again. The trustees will relinquish control when they believe I've secured Thornfield's future through prudent management and, he hesitated, appropriate marriage. And what do they consider appropriate? Amelia asked, though she suspected she already knew. A practical alliance. Someone with suitable connections, moderate temperament, and sufficient understanding of estate management to complement my own efforts. His voice carried a hint of resignation. They've presented several candidates over the years, none to your liking. None who saw Thornfield as more than a prize to be acquired. He looked directly at her then. Or who saw me as more than a title. That evening, Lady Constance found Amelia in the library, lost in thought. You witnessed my brother's true nature today, she said, settling into a nearby chair. Now perhaps you understand why I'm determined to free him from the trustees' influence. By finding him a wife they would approve of, Amelia replied. Someone practical and knowledgeable about estate matters. Someone exactly like you. Lady Constance's directness was startling. Your presence here wasn't entirely accidental, Lady Amelia. What do you mean? I knew of your situation, your father's plans for you, your reluctance. I made sure my carriage would be at Westmoreland that day. Lady Constance's expression was unapologetic. I created an opportunity, nothing more. You manipulated us both, Amelia said, the realization dawning fully. I introduced 2 people who might recognize in each other something worth choosing freely. Lady Constance rose. What happens next is entirely your decision, and his. Alone again, Amelia confronted uncomfortable truths. Her time at Thornfield, the conversations, the growing understanding between herself and the Duke, all stemmed from Lady Constance's careful orchestration. yet the feelings developing within her were genuine, born of witnessing the Duke's integrity and quiet strength. But could anything built on such a foundation truly flourish? And did she have the courage to tell him the truth, knowing it might destroy whatever regard he held for her? The invitation to Blackwood Manor's winter ball arrived with the Morning Post. Lady Constance read it aloud at breakfast, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Perfect timing," she declared. "The roads have cleared enough for travel, and society needs reminding that Thornfield hasn't become a hermitage." The Duke looked less enthused. "Blackwood is Lady Amelia's neighbor. Her presence with us will only fuel speculation. My absence would fuel it more," Amelia countered. "Besides, I must face society eventually." What she didn't say was that the prospect of returning to Blackwood, so close to her father's estate, filled her with dread. Lord Blackwood would certainly attend, possibly with Lord Bainbridge in tow. The Duke studied her face. "If you're certain, then we shall all attend. But at the first sign of discomfort, we leave. I won't have you subjected to cruelty for appearance's sake." His protective instinct warmed her, even as guilt gnawed at her conscience. Each day that passed without revealing Lady Constance's machinations felt like another brick in a wall of deception. The night of the ball arrived with crystalline cold. Snow crunched beneath the carriage wheels as they approached Blackwood Manor, its windows blazing with light. Amelia sat across from the Duke and his sister, dressed in a gown of deep blue velvet that Lady Constance had insisted suited her perfectly. "Remember," Lady Constance said as the carriage slowed, "hold your head high. You've done nothing shameful." The Duke offered his arm as they entered. "Stay close," he murmured. "We face this together." The ballroom fell momentarily silent as they were announced. Then, like a wave breaking, conversation resumed with renewed intensity. Amelia felt the weight of curious stares as they made their way through the crowd. Lady Harmond, a notorious gossip, was the first to approach directly. "Lady Amelia, what a surprise. We'd heard you were indisposed." "Not at all," Amelia replied evenly. "I've been enjoying Thornfield's hospitality during the worst of the weather. How fortunate that the Duke and his sister were able to accommodate you so spontaneously." Lady Harmon's smile didn't reach her eyes, and without the usual formalities of proper introduction, "Fortune favors the prepared, Lady Harmond," the Duke interjected smoothly. "Thornfield always stands ready to assist those in need." They moved on, but similar encounters followed. Each seemingly innocent inquiry carried veiled insinuations about Amelia's character and the propriety of her extended stay at Thornfield. During a momentary respite, Amelia spotted her father across the room, deep in conversation with Lord Bainbridge. The sight sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the winter night. "He hasn't seen me yet," she whispered to the Duke, "but he will. When he does, I'll be beside you," he promised, his hand covering hers briefly. The gesture, though small, did not go unnoticed by those watching. Lady Millicent Fairchild, wife of one of the Duke's trustees, approached with calculated grace. "Your Grace, how delightful to see you in society again, and with such interesting company." The Duke's posture stiffened. "Lady Amelia has been a welcome guest at Thornfield. Indeed. One hears such conflicting accounts these days." Lady Millicent's gaze slid to Amelia. "Some suggest the lady's presence serves purposes beyond mere hospitality." "What purposes might those be?" the Duke asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Why, securing your future, of course." Lady Millicent smiled thinly. "The trustees have long encouraged a suitable match." "How convenient that one should literally arrive at your doorstep." Amelia felt the blood drain from her face. Not only was her reputation being questioned, but the insinuation that she had deliberately orchestrated her situation to trap the Duke into marriage struck at her deepest fears. Before either could respond, Lady Constance appeared at their side. "Lady Millicent, your husband was just looking for you. Something about an urgent matter with Lord Blackwood." After Lady Millicent departed, the Duke turned to Amelia. "I apologize for that. The trustees' representatives have always lacked subtlety." "It's not your fault," Amelia said, though her voice trembled slightly. "But perhaps we should, Lady Amelia." The stern voice of her father cut through her words. Lord Blackwood stood before them, his expression thunderous. "I've been informed of your situation." The Duke stepped forward slightly. Lord Blackwood, your daughter has been an honored guest at Thornfield. So I've heard. Repeatedly. From every wagging tongue in 3 counties. Lord Blackwood's gaze hardened as it returned to Amelia. Was this your plan when you fled? To secure a more advantageous match through scandal? Father, no. Because if so, it was poorly conceived. Lord Bainbridge has withdrawn his offer. Your reputation is compromised beyond repair. Each word struck like a physical blow. Amelia felt the room closing in around her, aware of the avid listeners pretending not to hear. That's enough. The Duke's voice cut through the growing murmurs. You speak to your daughter in terms no gentleman would use in public. And you, your grace, harbor a young woman unchaperoned in your home, then express surprise at the consequences. Lord Blackwood's tone was scathing. Unless, of course, those consequences were your intention all along. The accusation hung in the air between them. For a terrible moment, Amelia feared violence might erupt. Instead, the Duke spoke with measured control. Lady Amelia came to Thornfield in distress, seeking refuge from an unwanted match. She has conducted herself with perfect propriety throughout her stay. Any who suggest otherwise insult not only her character, but my honor and that of my sister. His words, delivered with quiet authority, silenced the surrounding whispers. Even Lord Blackwood seemed momentarily at a loss. If you'll excuse us, the Duke continued, offering his arm to Amelia. I believe we've had enough society for one evening. The journey back to Thornfield passed in tense silence. Only when they were safely inside did the Duke's composure crack slightly. I should have anticipated such treatment, he said, pacing before the library fire. Society delights in nothing more than tearing down those who defy its expectations. You defended me beautifully, Amelia said softly. No one has ever spoken for me that way. He stopped pacing, his expression softening as he looked at her. I spoke only truth. Your conduct has been beyond reproach, but it hadn't been, Amelia thought with growing anguish. Not when she continued concealing Lady Constance's orchestration of their meeting. Not when she allowed him to believe their connection had formed naturally, without manipulation. The truth pressed against her conscience with unbearable weight. She had found something precious at Thornfield. Respect, understanding, perhaps even the beginnings of love. But it rested on foundations that would crumble with a single honest word. As she bid the Duke good night, Amelia made her decision. Tomorrow she would seek him out in the carriage house where their story began. There, she would tell him everything, and accept whatever consequences followed. Morning brought fresh snow and steely resolve. Amelia dressed simply, foregoing the finer gowns Lady Constance had provided. Today she needed to stand before the Duke as herself, without artifice or borrowed elegance. She found him exactly where she'd hoped, in the carriage house, inspecting repairs to the very vehicle that had brought her to Thornfield. He looked up at her approach, surprise giving way to a gentle smile that made her task all the more difficult. Lady Amelia, I didn't expect to find you venturing out in such weather. I needed to speak with you, she said, gathering her courage. Somewhere private, his expression grew serious. Has something happened after last night? It's not about the ball. Amelia glanced around the carriage house, with its smell of leather and polish, horses stamping quietly in their stalls nearby. It's about how I came to Thornfield in the first place. The Duke set down the harness he'd been examining. You entered my sister's carriage by mistake. A fortunate error, as it happens. Not an error at all. The words tumbled out before she could lose her nerve. Your sister arranged it. She knew of my situation, my father's plans for me, my desperation. She ensured her carriage would be at Westmoreland that day. Confusion crossed his face. Constance planned your arrival. Why would she? To help you escape the trustees' control. Amelia forced herself to meet his gaze. She believed I might be the kind of woman they would approve as your wife. Practical, knowledgeable about estate matters. Someone who could help secure your independence. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something darker. And you knew this all along. No, not at first. Amelia stepped forward earnestly. I only learned of it after I'd been here several weeks. Lady Constance admitted she'd created the opportunity for us to meet, but insisted what happened afterward was our own choice. The Duke turned away, his shoulders rigid with tension. Snow fell silently outside the open carriage house doors, creating a curtain of white between them and the rest of Thornfield. "So my sister manipulated us both," he said finally, "using your vulnerability and my obligation to the estate as her tools. She believed she was helping," Amelia offered weakly. "By treating us as pieces on a chessboard." He turned back, his expression pained. "And you, Lady Amelia, once you knew the truth, why continue the charade?" The question cut to her core. "Because I was afraid," she admitted. "At first, of having nowhere else to go. Then later." She faltered. "Later," he prompted. "Later. I feared losing what we had found here. The conversations. The understanding between us." Amelia's voice dropped. "I feared losing you." The Duke was silent for a long moment. Outside, a groom led horses through the snow, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. "I've spent my life being managed by others," he said finally. "My father, the trustees, and now it seems my sister. Always for my own good, of course." Bitterness edged his words. "Always with the best intentions. I'm sorry," Amelia whispered. "I should have told you immediately." "Yes, you should have." His gaze softened slightly. "But I understand why you didn't. Fear makes prisoners of us all, in different ways." He approached the carriage, running his hand along its polished surface. "Do you know why the trustees maintained such control over Thornfield? The true reason?" Amelia shook her head. "My father believed I lacked judgment. Specifically, that I was too idealistic, too concerned with tenant welfare at the expense of profit." A sad smile touched his lips. "He feared I would ruin the estate with my principles." "But you've managed Thornfield brilliantly," Amelia protested. "The estate prospers, the tenants thrive." "Yes, but not in ways that appear on quarterly balance sheets." He sighed. "The trustees demand immediate returns. I invest in people, in land that will yield for generations rather than seasons." Understanding bloomed within Amelia. "That's why they're so eager for you to marry, to secure a practical influence over your decisions." "A counterbalance to my dangerous idealism," he confirmed wryly. "Preferably someone with connections to their own interests." "And Lady Constance thought I might satisfy their requirements, while actually supporting your vision." Amelia shook her head at the complexity of the scheme. "She manipulated us, but not towards something she believed would harm either of us." The Duke studied her face. "That doesn't excuse the deception." "No," Amelia agreed. "Nothing excuses that, which is why I'm telling you now. Even knowing it might end whatever regard you hold for me." Something shifted in his expression, a softening, a recognition. "You could have remained silent. I might never have known. And built a life on lies." Amelia shook her head. "I've seen what such foundations yield in my parents' marriage. I couldn't bear it, not with you." Snow continued falling outside, transforming Thornfield's grounds into a blank canvas. Inside the carriage house, time seemed suspended as they stood facing each other. Truth finally laid bare between them. "What happens now?" Amelia asked finally. The Duke moved toward the carriage door, opening it with deliberate care. "Now, Lady Amelia, we begin again, without manipulation or obligation." He extended his hand. "I am James Harrington, Duke of Thornfield. I manage this estate with more concern for its people than its profits. I read poetry when no one is watching. And I've never met anyone who challenges my thinking as you do. Despite everything." Amelia felt a smile tugging at her lips. She placed her hand in his. "I am Amelia Blackwood. I fled an unwanted marriage and found myself in the wrong carriage. Or perhaps exactly the right one. I speak too directly for polite society, and I have never felt more myself than during our conversations about books and land and duty." His fingers tightened around hers. "Would you care to take a ride? The snow is perfect for a sleigh. Where would we go?" "Wherever we choose." His eyes held hers. "That's the point, isn't it? To move forward by our own decision, not someone else's design." As stable hands prepared the sleigh, Lady Constance appeared at the carriage house entrance, her expression apprehensive as she observed them together. "I see truth has finally prevailed," she said cautiously. The Duke regarded his sister with a mixture of exasperation and reluctant affection. "Your methods were inexcusable, Constance, but your results," she ventured. He glanced at Amelia. "Remain to be seen. We begin again, without your interference." Lady Constance nodded, accepting the rebuke. "For what it's worth, I never doubted you would find your way to each other. scheme or no scheme. Some connections transcend circumstance. As she departed, Amelia and the Duke settled into the sleigh, wrapped in furs against the cold. They set out across Thornfield's snow-covered expanse. "Your sister believes we were destined to meet," Amelia said as the horses pulled them smoothly forward. "Perhaps," the Duke replied. "But I prefer to think we choose our own path from here." The sleigh carried them away from the house, into the pristine whiteness where no tracks yet marked the snow. Behind them, Thornfield stood solid and enduring. Before them stretched possibilities unmarked by others' expectations. "Where shall we go first?" Amelia asked. The Duke, James, smiled at her, his reserve melting like snow in spring sunshine. "Let's visit the northern cottages. I'd like you to meet the families whose homes you helped save." As they continued through the winter landscape, Amelia realized they had found something rare. A connection built not on convenience or advantage, but on shared values and mutual respect. Lady Constance's scheme had brought them together. But what grew between them now belonged to them alone. The carriage that had once represented her mistake now carried her forward by choice, into a future they would shape together.